Hey, happy Friday and happy Digest Day. I had so much fun putting these digests together last season that I'm doing it again because it's such a nice chance for me to look around and look at what's inspiring me and then share that with you. So if you have enjoyed these, tune in on Fridays for short and sweet digests, particularly this season, looking for inspiration on people who've changed, who've made pivots, who have had big decisions thrust upon them or have chosen themselves to switch it up and do something different. Hoping you'll follow along and be inspired as well every Friday. Hey, happy Friday. You know, what I do when I come to record these Cream City Digests for the Friday is all week I'm like making notes in my journal and on scraps of paper and in my calendar of things that have brought me joy throughout the week. And I gather them all together on Wednesday or Thursday, and I just sit down and I start. Sometimes it's orchestrated, sometimes it's organized and I have a plan. Other times, like today, I don't. In fact, I just recorded this thing and then realized I wasn't using the microphone. So I'm doing it again. But that's to your benefit, I guess, because I'm going to be a little more concise this time. If you're joining me today, thank you for being here. If you're new because you heard about the podcast at the Henan Refugee Relief Group dinner on Monday, the Wilcuma Dinner, welcome. So happy you are joining the listeners of Cream City Dreams. And there are some diehard fans, and I am so grateful for them. And I want to start with that because Nancy from Watertown sent me a lovely text through the fan mail that you can send from the show notes. You should see, if you look in the show notes wherever you get your podcasts, that there's a button you can click and it says, just let me know what you thought. How was it? Send me a text. And it will automatically send that to me. And I just love it when I get those because sometimes when you're recording, you have to wonder, is anyone listening? Am I just putting this out into the universe? And that's okay too. That's fine. There's something about that is helpful in right, finding a voice and just practicing. But it is nice to know that people are listening. So thank you for the text, Nancy. She said, 2 very articulate women, inspiring, breaking down activism in very doable steps. And of course, she was talking about last week's guests, Lisa Williams and Cheryl Jewick, the 2 sisters who founded the Persisters. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you're going to want to go back and listen to last week's episode because it was so inspiring. And I wanted to talk today about how I was able to actually attend a Persisters meeting. I went last Friday to Lisa's house, which we talked about, how she opens up her dining room table. And indeed, it was a full house. It was spilling into her living room, her dining room, her kitchen. I would say at least 25 to 30 women there. 1 man. So men are welcome, but it did happen to be mostly women. And we sat around writing postcards for Susan Crawford, Judge Crawford, because this is an important, vital election on April 1st coming up. And we need to make sure that she is elected. So we were all writing postcards and just talking about our, as she said in the podcast, our hopes and our heartbreaks and things. People had the chance to share the things that they were working on. There was a woman there who was going to be leading the protest at the VA, which happened last Friday, if you heard about that in the news. And just heartwarming stories about people who are making change in our community. So I appreciated that so much. If that is something that you are interested in getting involved and being a part of a community and resisting in community, by all means, you should check out the Persisters. I also want to just give a quick shout out to Andrea, who bought me some coffee. I've been remiss this season of asking for people to buy me coffees. I used to do that a little more in seasons past, but there is a way to support the podcast. It does cost money to make a podcast, even though I'm not getting any sponsorship or bringing in any money yet. It does cost money to have a website and to host a podcast and to send out newsletters and all the things. So you could buy me a coffee. There's a little link in the show notes and on the website that'll take you to the Buy Me a Coffee site. And it's a fun way to show your support and let me know that you're listening, which is wonderful. So thank you, Andrea. And speaking of people supporting people in this community, the Wilcuma Dinner that my dear friend Nell Benton and I coordinated and orchestrated was on Monday, and it was wonderful. Oh my goodness. The food was amazing. The conversation was delightful. The atmosphere in Amalinda was just incredible. So much support for our refugee community and so much goodwill. So many people coming because they just want to help and make the refugees in our community feel welcome and feel a part of our community. And I just loved that. And we found out today that between the ticket sales, which went completely to Hanan, and the donations at the event, we were able to raise over $8,100 for them. And hopefully it will still keep ticking in. If you are interested in supporting Hanan, you're definitely not too late to get in on that. Even if you couldn't make the dinner, you can donate on their website, or I will link to their donation page in the show notes. But it was a very, very moving and wonderful night. We heard from Boyana Zurich Martinez, who, if you were listening to the podcast last season, know that Boyana is the director of the Bureau of Refugee Programs with the Wisconsin Department of Children and Families. So she works for the state and our state refugee coordinator. But she, more than talking about what she does there, although she talked about her experience as a refugee. And I think that was very moving for people. I think just to hear what that experience is like, what she shared again, what she had in her backpack when she left the former Yugoslavia in 1999. And when you hear that, you can't help but be moved and be then disheartened at the stop work order that is currently in place. So I think that encouraged more people to get involved, to pay attention, and hopefully to donate. So still a possibility if you want to do that. I want to shout out the chefs who were there that night by name and by restaurant, because I think it's really important to patronize the restaurants of the chefs who support our community. And by all means, I'm sure there are others. I'm sure probably most of the chefs in town would, but I just want to shout out the ones who came to this dinner because it was so delicious. And if you're thinking about a date night, if you're thinking about going out with your family on the weekend, if you're thinking about a nice brunch, these are the places to try. So we had Greg Leone from Emalinda, Dana Spandit from Flower Girl and Flame, Justin Abrahamian from Sanford, Mary Castman from Soon to Be Purslane, which will take over the new Ardent spot eventually, Jennifer Grundy from Seven Swans Creperie, and Gil Petrovic from Buckley's, as well as Nell Benton, who formerly of the National Cafe, many of you may remember that, in Bowles, Milwaukee, and who is now a realtor at Shore West, but whose skill in the kitchen has not diminished just because she's hung up the apron. Her dessert was, oh my goodness, chef's kiss, delicious. So please support them with your patronage, knowing that they support our community in return. I think that's really important. The other fun thing about the dinner, unrelated to what we were doing in support of refugees, is that two people approached me about potentially being on the podcast because of what they do. And I absolutely love what they do, and I'm happy to shout them out. So I love meeting potential guests in the wild or getting guest suggestions from listeners, one of whom I met is a woman who is a part of or is starting up, I'm going to find out her story soon, a threshold choir, and they go work with hospice organizations and bring their choirs to people who are nearing the threshold, people who are in their last days, maybe their last hours, and they sing to them. They sing softly and gently and invite the families to be a part of it if they want to, or just honor that passing or that threshold that is coming with song. And I just thought that is so beautiful. So I will have them on the podcast at some point in the future. The other woman who approached me was a woman by the name of Dee Kirschling, and she does two really cool things, both of which I'm excited to talk about on the podcast. For one, she is on the board of Girls Rock Milwaukee, and they are on my dreamy list to get on the podcast. I'm thinking about the season of Joy that I have coming up, and is it cool that they're the woman who runs it, her last name is Joy, so hey. But the second title that she has is Chief Dioramist. You'll remember what dioramas are? Maybe if you got kids, you've helped them make them for their classes. Or maybe you get that sheet home from the teacher and you're like, oh my God, I gotta do the gotta get you probably pull it out of your kid's backpack on the night before it's due. But no, this is like a super cool adult diorama that she is the CDO, maybe Chief Dioramist Officer of National Diorama Month. Who knew that such a thing existed? And now I am so glad I do, because what a joyful event this must be. It is going to be held Tuesday, March 25th at Amorphic Beer, which is in River West in Milwaukee. Starts at 6:30. And the idea is that adults make a diorama based on a theme. And this year's theme is myths and legends. Totally family friendly. You can bring your kids, but this diorama making is not for kids. This is only for adults. The participants must be adults. And the only rule is you can't use peeps. No peeps. But all things myths and legends, go for it. So, oh my gosh, how fun to get out on a Tuesday night and go check out these dioramas at Amorphic. And what's even cooler is that the event raises funds for a new local charity this year, which is called Street Life Communities, an organization that works with providing resources to our neighbors living on the streets. So double dose of joy there, giving to a good cause and getting to see some super cool creativity. All right, the last thing I want to do is shout out my dear friend Angie, who on Sunday night dropped off some cookies for me that she had made with a little note that just said, good luck tomorrow. I know it's going to be awesome. And she was talking about the dinner on Monday night. And I just want to shout that out because I think that is such a beautiful thing to do for our friends, to remember the big things that are happening for them, to remember how important those things are in our lives, and to acknowledge that. And she is so good at remembering, because that meant so much that out of the blue, was not expecting this, that she remembered. And I'm telling this more, yes, as a kudos to Angie. And thank you, Angie, because the cookies were delicious. But also as a challenge to say, is there somebody in your life that's got something going on that you can acknowledge, that you can say, hey, I'm just thinking about you? Because I think in these scary times that we're living in, it's nice to know that people are looking out for us, that we are not alone, even though it can feel very much like we are, and like our government certainly isn't looking out for us. So who is? And can we be those people for each other? So that's my challenge for the week, to think about how you can uplift somebody, how you can send a little note, a text, a voice memo, whatever it is, to a friend who's got something fun coming up, or who just might need a little extra boost. All right, tune in next week when Nell Benton, former chef turned realtor, will be on the show talking about her pivot. And it's a fun one because we're friends. Till then, Milwaukee, keep on dreaming.